Could you give me your name, please?
Yes, Ruth Whittington Lockart.
And where are you from?
I'm from Herrick, Illinois.
And what were your parents' names?
Ray and Sarah Whittington.
Do you have siblings?
No, I have no children.
You don't have any children, but do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have one sister in a nursing home and one in Assumption, one in a nursing home at Pana, Heritage Manor. And that's it. My oldest sister's gone and my brother's gone.
Did you just stop for a minute. I just stumbled all over the place. You want to keep running? Okay. Ruth, I want you to tell me about your childhood, what it was like in Herrick, Illinois. Let's talk about a young Ruth.
I had a good childhood. I was raised on the farm, and I still live on the same farm where I was born. And I had a good dad and mother, a real good dad and mother. They were good to us kids.
Was your mother a stay-at-home mom?
Yes, she was.
Do you remember, did you have a high school in Herrick, or did
Oh,
you?
yes. I went to Herrick Grade School and graduated from Herrick High School in 1941.
1941. Do you remember where you were when you heard that America was going to war?
I was at home on the farm. But then when the war broke out, being very patriotic, I thought I should do something like a lot of the other women were doing. So that's when I left the farm, and I had a sister living in Chicago, and I decided to go up there and see what I could do helping out during the war.
So what was your sister doing at the time?
At that time, she worked for the federal government in the VA office, and that's where she finished her 30 years.
Where did you live in Chicago?
When I first went there, I lived for what they call the Elner Club for girls. Only girls could stay there. Then we decided, we four girls decided we'd get an apartment close by where we thought we could live cheaper, and we did, on Woodlawn Avenue in Chicago.
So you were there looking for something to do with the war effort.
That's right.
And what did you decide to do?
Well, then I went to the American Aircraft Institute and learned how to rivet. And I graduated from there. I did layout, blueprints, and so forth. Then after that is when I received my job at Howard Aircraft.
Did you have to apply for a job at Howard Aircraft?
Yes.
You just didn't go in and say, here I am?
No. Where I worked for the American Aircraft Institute, they asked me if it would be nice if I'd like to go there, and I went and applied.
Tell me what it was like for a day at school, learning how to work around aircraft.
Well, quite different for me, of course. At the school, you mean?
At the school.
Well, we had to work with the guns and everything, with the rivet gun. They taught us how to do everything.
Around an airplane.
Oh, no, are you talking about?
I'm talking about when you were in school. What a day in school was like.
Well, we learned riveting and all of that. And they had me to make a little, like a gas tank, and rivet it all around. Make sure we riveted right.
So how long were you in school?
Well, let's see. I graduated from the school, American Aircraft, in April of '43. And I'm not sure just when I started. It was right away for Howard Aircraft that I went to work there.
Was your father the right age to be drafted? Was he in the war effort?
No, my father was in World War I.
So he was a little too old?
Oh, right.
And he stayed on the farm?
I stayed on the farm till I went to Chicago.
And your parents stayed on the farm?
Oh, yes. They continued farming.
Did you have other relatives that entered the war effort?
Yes. My nephew was killed in Vietnam. And my husband was in the war. He went to Germany, Belgium, and Holland. But we did not marry until after the war.
So after you went to the American Institute aircraft school, did you have to pay tuition to go to school?
Well, I must have. I don't know. I guess I did, but I don't know.
But your father would have taken care of that?
Yes, he would have taken care of that.
Was he a little troubled that his little girl was going to Chicago?
No, not at all, because he knew that I had a sister living in Chicago, and she was there ahead of me. So he was not afraid. And my father always taught if we was in trouble on something to come home. We were always taught that.
No place like home.
No place like home.
And then you went to Howard Aircraft.
Howard Aircraft.
And you walked in and said, I know how to rivet?
Well, I think really the school sort of encouraged me to go there, and that's how I got the job.
Did you consider entering the military during that time? Were you you'd found what you wanted to do?
Not at all. I just knew it was during the war, and that I wanted to do something to help, because I thought I should. Being patriotic, I thought we should do something to help during the war and win this war.
Were there a lot of women working there?
Yes, there was. Quite a few women. It was a pretty good-sized plant.
How old were you then?
I would say between maybe 20 years old.
How about men? Were most of the men in the service? Did you have a lot of men at the factory?
Well, there was men there, but I don't know. See, we were in different sections in the plant. There was a wing section and different sections. So there was some men there, but I don't know how many.
Well, let's talk about the airplanes themselves.
Okay.
What service were they for?
They were for, Navy trainers, 4 to 5 passenger Navy trainers.
And did they make different models, or were they all one airplane?
I think there was different models, but I don't know too much about them. The one I worked on, it was called the Nightingale, and I don't know just what it was like.
I think it was the G3.
G3.
And why did they call it the Nightingale?
I don't know. But I like that.
Was it used to transport wounded soldiers?
Oh, yes. Yes. Transport soldiers and
Florence Nightingale.
Yes.
I think it was after, don't you think it was after the nurse?
Yes.
Because they used it to transport the wounded.
Yes.
What was a day like when you went to the aircraft factory? What time did you have to go to work?
Usually early in the morning, around 8 o'clock, and was off maybe at 5 in the evening.
How did you get to the factory?
Streetcar.
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 And your sister was working for the VA.
She was working for the VA.
Did either of your two roommates also go to the factory, or were you on your own?
I was on my own.
Was that frightening to live in Chicago? And
not at all. It was quite different then than it is now. I wouldn't be afraid. I mean, I wasn't afraid then, but I think I would be now. Times were different. We could walk down the street. It was just like being in a small town. We weren't afraid. We could go to the meat market. They knew us. We could do anything like that. And we weren't afraid.
When you worked at the factory, I would suppose you had a supervisor?
Yes.
Would they check your work?
Oh, yes. If we did something wrong, like when you rivet the plane, and the rivets had to be just right. You couldn't make a ring around the rivet. If we did, it had to be drilled out and done over. You know, if you move your gun, it would make a ring around the rivet, and you'd have to do it over.
So they were looking over your shoulder?
Sure, sometimes.
You had somebody checking your work?
Well, they would check you, sure.
Was there a great source of pride, Ruth?
Absolutely. I've always been proud that I was a Rosie the Riveter. I have been.
And well, you should be. And well, you should be.
I am.
So how long altogether did you work at Howard Aircraft?
Well, starting after I graduated in 43, I worked all through 44. And then, if I remember correctly, our contract with the plant was closed. And then that's when I think I worked at Signal Depot for a little while. Then I left Chicago and went to beauty school.
Was the Signal Depot in Chicago?
In Chicago. And they also moved out of Chicago to Decatur, Illinois.
Did you go to Decatur with them?
No, I did not. I went to beauty school at Paris, Illinois.
Did you go home first? Did you go to Herrick and say hi, Mom and Dad?
Yes, I did.
And then you said, I want to go to beauty school?
Yes, yes.
How did you decide to do beauty school?
Well, I had relatives in Paris, Illinois. And so they wanted me to come there. And that's why I went there. And I was, you know what? I took my state board in Chicago, for beauty school. I made 96 average. I was real proud of myself.
Well, you should be. Did you get grades when you were in the aircraft school? Did they grade your work there?
Yes, they did.
How'd you do?
Well, I thought pretty good. In the 90s.
Did they ever fail anybody?
I don't know whether they did or not. But I was all right. They let me go.
And you had different areas of aircraft
yes.
work that you had to do?
Mm-hmm. Blueprint and all of that.
Well, so how did you end up with being Rosie the Riveter?
Well, I guess they just called us that when we was riveters. I don't know.
Well, with the different areas that you studied, did you just show a special knack for riveting?
Well, not necessarily. When I entered the plant, I guess that's what they wanted me to do, and that's what I did.
Did you get paid?
Yes. Oh, yes. My salary was 80-some cents an hour, and I thought I was rich. Back then, that was big money, I guess. Isn't that something?
That is something.
And I think I have my withholding statement for that year of 1944. I made only $900 and some for the year. And then out of my withholding, they took $100 and some. That was big money.
Now that was the whole year.
The whole year.
$964 for the whole
right.
year.
That's on my withholding statement. So, but now that would be nothing,
Well, 80 cents an hour, you worked 40 hours a week, and that was enough to pay your share of the apartment?
Well, we all shared the apartment. That's the way we did it.
What did your other two roommates do? What was their work?
I don't know what they did. One was from North Dakota, but I don't know what she did. And she stayed at the Elner Club for girls, too. And that's how we decided to room together. I know she was from the state of North Dakota, but I really don't know what she did.
What did your sister do at the VA?
My youngest sister, my older sister, she did veterans claims and worked in the chief attorney's office. She worked in the chief attorney's office, did veterans claims, hired, fired, and so forth. She had a good job.
And she stayed there for a long time?
Long time. She worked her way up from a 2 to a 9. And when that's when she retired and left Chicago also and moved back home on the farm.
Back to Herrick?
Back to Herrick.
So you're home, and you've decided to go to beauty school.
Yes.
How long did you stay home before you went to Paris?
Not very long. They begged me to come, and I did.
But you had relatives there?
Yes.
So you weren't alone?
My relatives, no. I was very careful what I did.
How did you meet your husband?
Well, he was from Cowden, and I was from Herrick. And that was about 9 miles apart. And my grandmother lived in Cowden. And I guess we met at church. My grandmother thought everybody in August, when we had big family dinners, should go to church. That's how I met him. And I know he was in this class when we went to church, and I thought at that time he was stuck up. Didn't care for him. But we met after the war again, and that's when we were married.
So you didn't go to the same school?
No, he went to Cowden School, and I went to Herrick School.
And he went to the war?
And he went on to the war.
And you went to Chicago?
I went to Chicago.
So how did you get back together?
Well, after I came home, and he called me. And we started going together, and that's the way it was.
And what was his profession?
In the early years, he was a barber, and then later in life, he became a real estate and insurance broker.
So you were a beautician?
I was a beautician, and he was a barber early in life when he came back from service.
And where did you live after you got married?
In Cowden. Mm-hmm.
Do you have children?
No, I have no children.
And you have 3 sisters?
I have 2 living sisters, but I had 3. One's gone.
Nieces and nephews?
Yes, but they all live away. Most of them live around Davenport and Decatur. Davenport, Iowa.
Tell me where you were when the war ended.
In Cowden.
So they closed the factory before the war was over?
Yes, it was closed.
They just didn't need to continue building airplanes?
No, I guess not. I was talking to my youngest sister, and she thought the other day that they moved to St. Charles, Illinois, but I don't know whether they did or not.
What was it like to hear that the war was over?
Very happy.
Was there a lot
Very happy.
of celebrating?
A lot of celebrations.
Were you and your husband seeing one another then? Had he gotten home by then?
No, he had not come home yet.
Where did he serve during his time overseas?
In Germany, Belgium, and Holland.
And which branch of the service?
He was in the Army.
Was he wounded?
Well, he came back with some shrapnel on his legs. Shrapnel wounds. Mm-hmm.
Did he get shipped back to a hospital?
No.
They took care of him overseas?
Yes, they did.
Did that bother him later in life?
He didn't talk too much about it. He would just talk about the shrapnel. He was in the Signal Corps.
What did they do?
Well, I guess they said, I don't know what the Signal Corps does, but that's what he was in.
How long was he overseas?
Maybe close to 3 years, I think. Something like that.
Was he an officer or a non-commissioned officer?
He came back a T5, whatever that is.
Whatever that is.
And I don't know what that is.
Did you spend a lot of time later in life talking about your wartime experiences?
He never said too much about it.
Did you find that rather common among the people that had been involved in the war effort?
Well, I think so. He just didn't say much about it. I know there's a book out, a Timberwolf Howl, and I have it, and it tells all about it. A thick book at home entitled, he was called a Timberwolf. That's what his outfit was called, the Timberwolves.
And there's a book about that.
And I have the book on it, a thick book. It tells everything about it.
What did he think about you working in a factory?
Well, he never said. See, he was across. He was across. I was back here working in a factory. So I guess it was all right. He never said.
I think it was all right.
But, you know, back then, we was all patriotic. We thought we should do something to help the war.
When you were in Chicago, did you go to any USO?
No. No, I did not.
Did you ever hear about them or go to,
Yes,
to hear
I
about
have.
the dances?
No, but I never went. No.
Were you too shy?
No, I just didn't do things like that. We would go downtown on Sunday to the Chicago Theater, somewhere like that. you know, or to the Trianon to hear Sammy. Well, Lawrence Welk was always at the Trianon, and we'd go down there. They would be dancing. They were close to us on the south side. I lived on the south side of Chicago, what they call the Hyde Park district.
So that's what you did on Sundays?
Lots of times we did, or go down to the Trianon. Sammy Kaye would be there. I mean, the Trianon, Lawrence Welk would be at the Trianon, and Sammy Kaye was usually down at Chicago Theater.
Did your roommates go?
Oh, yes.
Did any of them meet any soldiers that they ultimately spent their lives with?
No. Well, yes. The girl that was from Nebraska met her husband some way in Chicago, and she went back to Nebraska to live. Yes.
It had to be an interesting time. How did you and your roommates deal with keeping food on the table, with the rationing?
Well, let me tell you how we did it. 1 week, one bought the food. 1 week, one did the dishes. One did the housework, and one did the laundry. That's we had. It was a routine. That's the way we did it. We all paid our share.
But you had to deal with couponing?
Well, we had them, I guess, back then.
But so many things were rationed, and with Chicago being...
The sugar was rationed.
What was your uniform like to go to work in the factory?
Well, we mostly wore blue jeans or something like that.
Was it like a coverall, maybe?
Yes, like a coverall.
Not too becoming?
Well, it was all right for us, I guess.
Working...
You know, to rivet like cowlings on the airplane, you had to go up on a ladder sometimes, on a ladder to get up there. Because it was, the plane was, the front part was off the ground.
Ruth, you're a tiny woman. It had to be a pretty big ladder that you had to climb.
Well, that's all right. We did it.
So, didn't you go up by the propeller?
The cowling was up near the propeller. It's the belly of the plane.
And
the cowling is the belly of the plane.
And where did you have to put the rivets?
Which would be the belly.
Okay.
The bottom part of the plane, like that.
Every part of the plane had other people working on it?
Yes.
So how many people would you say were working on a plane at the same time?
Maybe 4.
So you were at the front. Somebody's in the middle?
Well, I don't know where they all were at the time, but they were on different parts of the plane. Now, the wing section was done in a different part, and then they were assembled in a different assembly.
So when you were doing your thing, the whole plane wasn't put together yet?
No, not yet. No. I just did the cowling. Maybe the wing was done somewhere else, and then it was assembled.
Well, the cowling is the big round...
The belly.
...part. Then the propeller is in the front?
In the front.
Was it a big airplane?
Well, I don't know how long it was. I don't know, but it wasn't a very... It held 4 to 5 passengers, so it wasn't considered large.
And it was a trainer?
A Navy trainer. That's what it was used for.
Were these planes all in one big factory room, or were there different sections?
Different sections.
So were you in a room with one plane that you were working on? Or
yes, one part.
And when you'd finish your job, it would go to the next step?
Next step. And then we would work on another cowling. That's all we did.
Do you have any idea how many airplanes you worked on in that length of time?
No, I don't, but they did a lot of them.
And when they closed the factory, obviously you were still making airplanes. Do you know what happened to those planes?
No, I don't. I really don't know.
They just said to you one day, we're closing the factory?
Uh-huh.
Did that frighten you a little bit?
No,
Because?
because I knew I could always go home.
And you did.
And I did.
Well, how old were you then?
Maybe 22, 23, somewhere along there.
And how old were you when you got married?
26. And see, as old as I am now, I kind of forget all those things.
Going from riveting in an airplane factory to being a hairdresser had to be quite a switch. I still would like to know how you decided to become a hairdresser.
Because I had relatives at Paris, Illinois, and they encouraged me to come. That's how I did it. So I went to Paris.
How did they know you had a knack for that?
I don't know. But I worked quite a while, and I had a girl working for me.
Well, you had your own shop.
I had my own shop, and I had a girl that was working for me.
And how long did you do that?
Oh, maybe 6 years or more. A long time. And then finally, I decided to retire from the shop, and I sold my business to her.
And how old were you then?
Oh, my. Maybe in my 30s. Maybe 35.
How long did your husband stay a barber?
Well, maybe 45, around 45 or something like that. And then he went into real estate and insurance.
In Cowden?
No. We left Cowden, sold our home, and moved to Assumption. And then he became a barber there first. And then we sold the building and shop and everything there. And then he became a broker, a real estate and insurance broker, and that was it.
Now, I understand that there's some place in the United States that honors the Rosie the Riveters.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about that.
I hear from them all the time. In fact, I sent some of this literature to them. It's at Richmond, California. It's a museum out there, and I hope someday I get to go.
Is it just about Rosie the Riveter?
It's just about Rosie the Riveters.
How did you feel when you'd see these posters everywhere with Rosie the Riveter and that they were needed? Did you have a sense of pride then?
Very much so. I've always been very happy to know that I did something during the war.
Well, back in Herrick, and probably being a farming community, were there other war efforts going on?
Yes.
Did women get together and fold bandages?
Well, I don't know so much about that. See, after I left and went to Chicago, I don't know too much what they did back there. But I know a lot of them went to Illiopolis, to something there. I don't know what that was called, but they had something there. I think they made bombs or something. I don't know. At Illiopolis, Illinois.
What surprises me that you went to Chicago when Illiopolis was so much closer.
Well, you know, one thing, I thought I was big as my sister. And that's why I guess I went. Really, that's true.
Mom and Dad didn't say, let's go to Illiopolis?
No.
So your sister was your
mentor.
Get out of Herrick card.
Yes. But I think they still have the mounds at Illiopolis where they had those underground place stored away. Mm-hmm.
When you think back to those years, got out of high school, the war started, there's Mom and Dad. Do you think you would have done anything differently?
No, I've had a good life. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it at all.
When the war was over, was life a little tough?
No. No.
You went to beauty school.
Went to beauty school and worked. Back there, we didn't have the prices we have now. As a hairdresser, maybe I gave a permanent for $5, where now they're $25. But that was still big money. You see, we could buy more for what we made than what you can now.
What kind of products did your folks grow on the farm? Was that helpful to you in the big picture?
Well, it was a cattle and grain farm. Mm-hmm.
So if you were running a little short on meat, could Dad?
Oh, sure, they butchered. Back there, the neighbors all got together and butchered. That was a big time.
Well, from what you've told us, your parents were very supportive.
Yes.
Of your whole life.
Yes. Even when I started to beauty school, my daddy helped pay my way. That's right, he did. Of course, I tried to pay him back. But you know, that's the way we did.
It must have been a good life.
I did have a good life, and I've always been proud that I was a riveter, and always will be.
Well, I have to say, you're the most beautiful Rosie the Riveter I've ever seen.
Oh, thank you, but I don't. Not
and thank
anymore.
you so much for this interview.
Thank you. But I just hope someday that I will get to go to California, and I was glad that I could send them all the literature.
Is your picture out there?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I sent a picture of the plane and everything.
It should be an interesting
They have
trip.
all that.
We wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed being a Rosie the Riveter and enjoyed this interview. I hope
You have.